All right, back for another beer review, and today I am reviewing a beer from the Bend Brewing Company, and they're out of Bend, Oregon, and this is their Devil's Cabbage. So they are calling this a dank IPA. Comes in at 7% alcohol by volume, 60 IBUs at the time of review. This can is approximately 2.5 months old, and I want to give a huge thanks and shout out to a friend of mine and a fellow beer tuber, Han, over at Han Yolo Reviews. He hooked this one up along with 5 other beers from the Pacific Northwest recently in a great beer mail. So in the description box, I will post a link not only to the beer mail unboxing video that I did, but also to Han's channel. If you haven't checked it out, highly recommend doing so, especially if you love craft beer and sneakers. So anyway, yeah, I don't know much about the Bend Brewing Company. They say it's a dank IPA. Now, this is 2.5 months old. It is a bit older. And I'm gonna, go into it with no preconceived notions, but I will not be surprised if it's a little bit more malt forward. On the back it says the High Desert Hop Series is BBC's love letter to our favorite little green plant, and Devil's Cabbage Dank IPA is our love letter to Oregon's newest legalized agricultural resource. It is brewed with generous amounts of Columbus, Mosaic, Amarillo, and Simcoe hops. Dank IPA has a resinous and dank hop profile that helps this beer live up to its name. So there's also, I don't know how this can come off on camera, there's like a slice in the side of the can. When I was doing the beer mail unboxing, I noticed it. I didn't use my box cutter to get into the actual individual like bubble wrapped beers. So I don't know where that came from. Luckily, it did not leak or anything, so we should be fine. I'm gonna crack this one open. Let's get into it. Give it a nice pour here. Yeah, so that's pouring out like an old school West Coast IPA, which is probably what they're going for. A nice resinous, dank West Coast IPA. And you know what? I'm down for it. Anyway, that pours out this beautiful looking, that looks like a West Coast IPA, I'm sorry, but it has like this golden orange color, has about a finger of a bright white head, super creamy looking, looks beautiful in the glass. Let's get a nose. Wow, that actually still has a lot of hop character. 2.5 months old, like I said, you're talking 10 weeks. And yeah, it's still pretty vibrant. A lot of pithy and like sharp, zesty citrus, grapefruit pith, grapefruit peel, orange peel. A little straight up, just like juicy orange too. Touch of blueberry, mosaic, maybe just a touch of blueberry, like a more of like a tart blueberry. This isn't overly dank. It's called, what is it? Devil's Cabbage, right? Devil's Cabbage, dank IPA. Not getting a huge dank profile. It's definitely there. It has more like of this like onion garlic thing going on. Definitely some resinous pine in here as well. This is all about citrus. This is, again, like my mind is perceiving this as a West Coast style IPA. There's a little bit of like underlying caramel malt component, a little bit of breadiness too. I will say this, for being 2.5 months old, it does still have some very nice characteristics to it. I'm not getting a huge malt presence to it, although it is there. So often, well, I should say more often than not, when I do have an older IPA, and again, 2.5 months, I mean, I know IPAs for a long time, you drink them, a lot of places say a lot of breweries say 3 months or fresher. I typically like to drink my IPAs no older than 6 weeks old if I can help it, just because I want to drink what, as far as the freshness of the beer, whatever the brewer intended it to be. More often than not, they'll say like, drink fresh, drink now, don't age it. That's what I usually do. At the same time, I've had, some IPAs that are 4 or 5 months old that are delicious. So it all depends on the beer, right? But for 2.5 months old, this does smell pretty damn good. So let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. And thanks again, Han. Yeah, it's way more dank in the taste. Wow. And bitter. That is aged relatively nicely. Yeah, this is what I would expect of this beer, super fresh. So first thing up front, you're hit with caramel, a little bit of like bready malt component. It's definitely sweet up front. As it passes through the palate, that zesty grapefruit peel, the pith of the grapefruit, the zesty, more bittering aspect of a grapefruit, orange peel, kind of hits you mid-palate. Mixed in with a little bit of like juicy orange, a little bit of like a tangerine. But as it continues throughout the palate, there's this nice resinous pine character along with a substantial bitterness and a pretty big dank component that kind of hits you midway through the palate and carries on to the finish. This one finishes pretty damn dry, quite bitter. But yeah, that's kind of what the style is intended for, right? 7%, this is straight up medium body. It does have not as much carbonation as I'd anticipate from, West Coast style. I mean, there's carbonation here, don't get me wrong, but it's not super spritzy. It's slightly soft and smooth, but, it's not quite what I expect, but it's very close. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, this is kind of what I want from the style, albeit I think I want more complexity and definitely a little bit more of a citrus blast of fruits. Like I'm getting the pithy, rindy aspect of the grapefruit, of the orange. I want a little bit more juicy characters here. But as is, like this is drinking quite well. Is it crazy dank? No, it's not crazy dank. There is a dankness here. Is it crazy bitter? It's not crazy bitter, but there is a substantial bitterness here. If you like West Coast style IPAs and you like to have more of a firm bitterness, you want more of that resinous pine, a nice dankness, but you also want a little bit of that like zesty citrus fruit, this is the beer for you. For me, yeah, I'm enjoying it. As you guys can see, I'm drinking this, quite easily. 7%, I really can't tell you it's 7%. Drinks like a 5%, West Coast style pale ale or something. It's solid. Nothing that I'm going to go crazy about. I've had so many beers like this in my life that I can't say this is substantially better than most of them, but it's right there with them. So I don't think this is a super dank IPA at this point in its life, at 2.5 months old. Maybe fresher, that dankness kind of overwhelms you or just punches you in the face. And if you like that, would be the beer for you. As is though, it is still pretty tasty. I do enjoy it. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing blowing me away. Appropriate rating for the Devil's Cabbage from Bend Brewing Company. I'm gonna give it a straight 3.75 out of 5. It's a good West Coast style IPA. Nothing, like I said, wrong with it. Not necessarily right in my wheelhouse, but I'm enjoying West Coast style and more bitter IPAs in general lately. I review so many New England style pale ales and IPAs and double IPAs and triple IPAs that when I get a beer like this, it's refreshing to my palate. And this one is kind of resonating with me more so than it typically would. So 3.75 out of 5 for Devil's Cabbage Dank IPA from Bend Brewing Company. Pretty damn good beer. I enjoy it. If you enjoy West Coast style IPAs, this is probably your jam. So if you've had this one before, let me know what you think about it. Thanks again to Han for hooking me up with this one. And thanks to everybody for stopping by for another beer review. To the next one, cheers.